So custom block types. By now, can we guess what's going to happen? Probably not. Okay, that's not fair. This doesn't involve YAML. But it does involve that other type of metadata registration that I talked about a long time ago, annotations. And aside from annotations, so what we know about annotations, I'm not going to wax too hard in this direction. Basically, we're going to make a class, we're going to give it annotations, and we're going to have a new block type. Welcome to the future. Here's what we're going to cover. A complete module with custom block type. Annotations and plugins, generally. Annotations versus Drupal 7 hooks. And this will just reiterate what I talked about why annotations exist and why they're better, in my opinion. And we'll write a block with a configuration form. So this is a completed module with a new block type. You're seeing it all, folks. I've created a new module info file right there. And then I created a new block right there. And this block shows up in the system and can be placed on your page. How? Why? Who? So the how is because of the annotations. I built this block and put it in a specific place. There is an annotation within Drupal for a plugin type called block. The plugin system discovered my block automatically when we cleared cache. Actually, when I enabled the module, the cache was cleared because that's something that happens. It discovered it. It says this is a block and it's got my baseline requirements of having an ID and having some label that we can use to identify it on the admin form. It extends the block base, which is a helper, a class full of helper methods. And this block totally works. The system discovered this block on its own because of annotations. I didn't have to write hook block info or anything like that. Plugins, and I talked about this earlier, but just to reiterate, plugins are new to Drupal 8. And basically, plugins are like mini, tiny parts of plugins that are swappable and discoverable, and they use annotations to denote their metadata. Any questions about this complete, amazing block module? We'll see it in action shortly. I think there's only like 6 slides in this whole thing. So, hey, look, this is probably I just talked about all of this. So here's how you write a custom block type. What I found, I could be wrong about this, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure when you define a plugin in a Drupal 8 module, it does have to be in the plugin folder. Like plugins are the one thing, sort of, the fact that they're discoverable, it makes sense to me that it would be less impactful on the system for them to be in a place that is expected. Does anybody know if you can put a plugin wherever you want, or if they must be in the plugin folder? Let's go with they must be in the plugin folder. I'm sorry? Yeah, I mean, because if you're going to have your system automatically try to discover things, do you want to crawl through every possible folder in the system, or do you want to say like, look, put it in the plugin folder, or it's no deal? To me, that's how I would have written it, and one day I'll look it up.
I remember when you were looking at that page on the Google block module, that there was 2 folders you could put in there. I think I went over like the module folder and the theme folder or something like that. Something weird, some other folder.
Huh.
But I don't remember that. That's been a while ago.
I know before.
I would say you practically put it in.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
Before, I tried to put it in a folder called plugins, plural, because I thought that made sense.
I'm in a folder space. I looked up the Slack and you put on plugin. I'm talking about
Oh, okay.
Never mind.
Oh, yeah. No.
If I just brought that up.
I know one time I tried to put it in a folder called plugins, plural, and it didn't work out, and so I'll never change.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
That's what I would think. So I'd say let's just all agree that plugins all go into the plugin folder. The annotation is this format again, where it's like at block, which is a specific expectation of the system that the system knows to expect an annotation called block. And that block annotation has two parameters, at least two parameters, an ID and an admin label. I'm going to keep going. I think I just said all of this. Annotations versus Drupal 7 hooks. So if you've worked in Drupal 7 before and you had to make a custom block, you had to write custom hook block info, and you just returned an array back to Drupal. Like, here's your new metadata, Drupal. And then to show the block to the user, you had to write hook block view, and it accepted some delta, which was a block ID. You're like, if my block ID is equal to what I want it to be, then return this block. And this stinks. So instead, we're like, hey, Drupal, why don't you just go discover on your own that I have a block, and when you find that class, know that my build method is going to return the output. Yeah.
Even when I was coding Drupal 7, I was like, why?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm pretty happy with a lot of the results of Drupal 8. So you can also have a block that's configurable, and I'll show that on the Drupal 8 site shortly. And the way you do that is the same as before. I cut off stuff because, you know, the slides are short. But you have a new block, and I definitely have an annotation up here. It's just been cut off. You have a block, and this block implements the build, which is the output. But it also has a block form method, which returns a Drupalism, which is the form array, and a block submit method, which takes the values from that form and stores it in the block's configuration file. So that's it. It's the exact same thing, but there's two additional methods to make your block configurable. Yeah, that is, so this is the Drupalism. The form array is, it's like, you've used CMB2? So when you're defining form items, you know, you have like a form item type, an element type. So in Drupal, throughout all of Drupal's history, it's always prefixed special properties that are related to the form system with a hash. So because what you can do in Drupal is you can have child elements, and basically child elements, I could have an array inside of here, which is a whole nother form element, and then another one, and another one, another one. And if it does not have the hash, Drupal attempts to render it. It assumes it is a child element. If it has the hash, Drupal knows that this is a property, and I expect to use this as data. I don't try to render it. It's just a Drupal thing. And I think, I don't want to pontificate, I don't want to speculate rather on recording. I'll cut this out. Cut this out. I think it's because, like, there was an attempt to be clever and use the INI syntax to where this is actually, if this were to be parsed by the parse INI, this would be a comment. I don't know if that's true, but there was one time where I felt like I saw something, I'm like, oh, that's why they start with the hash. But that could have just been a dream. I don't know. Definitely cut that out.
You had that dream too?
Yeah, y'all had that dream, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. That's the very last slide. I'm going to show this code in action, and I think we're good to go, or we can Q&A, or we can do whatever y'all want. So let me go to my D8 test site. I don't know if I have enabled this module. It would be called example blocks. There it is. All right, and let's just pick the first one first, the easy one first, rather. All right. So my first block example, let's stretch this out a little bit. So in my entire block module. I've got an info file. It tells me the name of the module. That's it. And then from there on, we're in source, we're in plugin, we're in block. And from now on, the annotations are doing all the work as far as registering it with Drupal. Let's open both of these up, shut this bad boy down. So here we've got that first world's simplest block. Since I enabled the module in Drupal and saved it, Drupal cleared the cache, because whenever you enable or disable modules, Drupal clears cache. So now I should be able to go to structure and block layouts, and I should be able to place both of these blocks. So let's place this on the sidebar. Sidebar first, sounds good. I'm going to place block. We should have my first block example. There it is. So Drupal found it. I'm going to place it. No special configuration form. This is the default Drupal block configuration form. This has got nothing custom in it. I'm going to save that, and we'll go visit the home page, and we'll see that outstanding block content. There it is, my first block example. This is such a great block. I agree block. So there it is. There's my custom block. It took counting the info file, counting all the code comments. It took 31 lines of code to implement a custom block. And that's counting what appears to be 24 lines of comments. So now let's look at that configurable block example. So I'm just going to go add that configurable block example to this same sidebar. Yeah, configurable. It is really late to my brain. Okay, so this block has this extra checkbox that is say hello. If we look at the code there, in the block form method, I return the Drupalism that is a Drupal form. And I've got a checkbox. I've got one field called say, whose name is say hello. The type is checkbox. The title is say hello. And the default value is whether this is checked or not. In a lot of other array-based form systems, they just call that value. It's called default value in Drupal for some reason. A good reason. I don't think so. I think it's just some reason. And then when this block is submitted, we're going to go into the form state. We're going to get the value for that field that is named say hello. See how I named the field say hello here? So go to the form state, get the value that was submitted for that field, and then dump it into this configuration array, wherever I want. I kept it the same because that's just pretty common. So I'm going to go ahead and place that block without checking that. I'm going to save that. And so I'm going to go here and refresh this page. And my configurable block example just has the word world, period, in it. And so if I configure it and check this thing, I think you can imagine what happens when I check say hello. Save that block. It's going to say Wackinator. It says hello world. So that's just because here in the build, which is the output part of it, I just say go get the configuration for this block. You know, if not empty, you know, the sentence is just the word world, and if not empty, the config array say hello, then add the word hello to the beginning of that. And then return it. That's markup. So that is a configurable block. Any questions about blocks? And I hope you see the power of annotations and the prolificness of YAML in Drupal 8. It is all over the place. Any questions about blocks? Y'all want to see a calculator block? All right, so we started with calculator. Let's end with calculator. It's on. Let's just enable my calculator module, and then I'll walk. So I'll show it, and then I'll walk through all the code. Simply, not necessarily in depth. You'll see. So I believe I implemented all of these ideas that we talked about today into this one module. So yeah, I think we did routing. Okay, so I enabled my calculator module. Now I should be able to visit a new page. I added a route to my calculator module that outputs the calculator. So it starts at the number 0. And then I'm going to choose an operation to add, subtract, divide, or multiply. Let's start by adding. And then I'm going to add the number 8. So now the total is 8. Y'all thought this was going to look like a regular calculator. No. I didn't have time for that. No. So I'm going to keep a little history here of what operations we've done. That's pretty simple, right? So I added 8. Let's add 91. I'm just making this up. Then we'll so that gives us a total of 99. Let's divide by 11. Is that going to be even? Yeah, 9. Cool. All right. I didn't get too nuts with it. Let's multiply by 7 just to prove that all this works. There we go. So let's get to here, and then I'll show you this in a form, or in a block. So Drupal 8 Essentials Training, Drupal Calculator. There we are. Step 1, the info file. Name, description, type, core, brand new property here. I added a version, so I'm now versioning this module. It starts at 01, and that's just whatever you want it to be. All right, so let's look at. Let's go through it like we're looking at this module for the very first time. So routing. All right, so this module is going to provide a route. That route has a name, which probably isn't used anywhere because it doesn't offer any links. But that route routes to a form. That is Drupal Calculator form calculator form. Nice. And it has a title and the permission access content, so anybody can access this calculator. So from here, let's just let this lead us along the path. So let's go look at that form. We've got a source, form, calculator form. All right. Let's just do this. So I create a new class called calculator form that extends the form base, which means I must implement get form ID. My form ID is calculator. Then I build this form, which has has a few different form elements in it. So I've got a number field, which is just the total, whatever the total is. I've got the operations, which is that select, where I just offer to add, subtract, divide, multiply. I've got the operation value, which I couldn't figure out. What do you call the thing that you do to the next number? What's the next number called? I call it an operation value. Then I have a submit button. I've got a clear button. And I've got this operation history, which I got a little fancy with. Not much, but a little. So there's my calculator form. That's what it looks like. And here's what happens when you submit it. So when you submit it, ignore this part. This was a trick I did to get the operation history to work. But so the first thing I do is, let me just do it like this. I get the total. That's the last total that it starts with. Then I get the name of the operation, which is add, subtract, whatever. I get the operation value, which is that new number we're going to do something to the total. And then I go get a service called calculator. That means I probably defined the service in this module. So I'm going to go get a service called calculator, and I'm going to execute this method called setTotal, which is what we start with. And then let's go from there. Services, yep, I got a service named calculator, and it loads the class calculator. Y'all are going to dream about the word calculator tonight. And so this calculator class is the exact same thing we started with in an introduction to object-oriented. But I've provided it as a service to Drupal. So there it is, it just adds, divides, and whatnot. So I've got the operation, which should be a word, add, subtract, divide, multiply. And I say, if a method with that name exists on my object calculator, then let's go ahead and call that. That's a little fancy, don't worry about that. But I say, call the method name add on the calculator and pass the operation value into it. That's just, this is normal PHP, this is not Drupal. Ignore this. And then I say, so back to the form set the value for the calculated total into the form state. Now this way the form can know what that resulting value is. And then I dump some strings into this history value that I made up. But so now the page, we submitted the form and the form comes back and reloads. And now the form state knows what the new total is, because in the last form submission I set that value. So I see form state get calculated total. So that's how the form state continues to know what the last number was. So we see a form, we submit it, change its values, and when the form reloads, it knows what those changed values are. Okay, so that's the form version. What else does this module have in it? It's got a plugin. So we've gone through all these YAML files. It's got a plugin, a block, a calculator block. Okay. Starts over, yeah. Now, it's storing it. It's storing it in the database. So the form state between loads is stored in the database in a certain cache. And so this part that I said was a trick, form rebuild, set rebuild to true, is me tricking the form and telling it, hey, remember the values that I set for this and rebuild the form. Assume the form's not done, so after this submission, rebuild it. And maybe this example is a little too wishy-washy for an intro. Basically, this is a trick, don't worry about it. I'm just showing off making a form, a route to a form, and the details about what it took for me to make this calculator work as a form are. Yeah.
Then when I come to that page, you'll have whatever you're finished with, unless you tie it to my user or something like that.
Yeah, I could have stored it as a cookie, and then it would only be whatever you personally last used the calculator for. Or I could store it in the database, key to your ID, or just generically, and everybody shares the same calculator total. But yeah, so like here in the form submission, whatever I want to do is up to me. And for me personally, I'm like, I'm going to trick the form into thinking it's not done yet and just reload. And dear form, remember your own values. It's not important.
I missed. Oh, there it is. Form state set. Okay.
Yeah. So
if you want to save something between the form states, you just set the
value. Yeah, and this is setting a value in the form state, and I'm able to get that value back out of it on the form reload because I told the form state, I tricked the form state into thinking you're not done
so
yet.
It's a combination then of setting it and then
yeah, what I've actually done here is made a multi-step form that only has one step that repeats that step over and over again. So hope that's not too confusing.
I've done it before in 7, but it's been a while, so I'm trying to remember how it works.
Yeah, I could have done it with the Ajax also, but I was trying to keep it somewhat simple. Okay, so now I got a calculator block. So let's throw this bad boy in a block. And we're going to go to structure. We're going to go to, oh wait, we're already at block layouts. Let's place a block in the sidebar. The calculator block will do. And I made a little setting called show the operation history or not. So let's not. You can imagine what it looks like if it's shown. And so now my calculator should appear in the sidebar. Yep, there it is. We're just going to add 19. and divide by 2. Oh, that's going to mess up the number. Oh, no, okay. Numbers can, yeah, there you go. So that's the calculator and the block. Let's see how that looks. So the form, the show history or not checkbox, that's just like the last thing. It's just a checkbox. And on the block forms, configuration form submit, I get the value of that checkbox and dump it into the configuration array. For the block's output, I build a new copy of the form that I created using Drupal's form builder. You're not really ever going to have to do this, but here's an example of a thing I did. And I get the configuration for this block, and if the configuration says to show the history or not, I adjust that form that I just went and built. And that's it. So this block doesn't remake the entire form. It just goes and gets the form using Drupal's own form builder and says, build that form as the output field.